Nothing adds more to horror than spiritual warfare. That raging and endless battle between God and Satan, all played out in our very human world, littered with fragile and pliable souls that are sometimes all too eager to be pawns in a cosmic chess game. As you've chosen to watch this video, I'll assume that you're as fascinated by such films as I am. What better then than to take 5 satanic horrors from my DVD collection and tell you all about them? And these titles will be placed in an order that's been decided by subscribers to my channel, who took part in a community poll to choose which of them was their overall favorite. That poll is no longer available, but I'll show you the final result of the vote at the end of this video. And because you're only allowed 4 options in an image poll, it means that I had to choose the 5th placed film. So let's begin. The Devil Rides Out is the tale of a struggle between God and the devil, between good and evil, and between the characters who become ensnared in that struggle. The film features horror icon Christopher Lee in a rare heroic role, playing the part of the white hat occultist Nicholas Duc de Richelieu, a character who would appear in several of Wheatley's novels. And opposed to him is Mokata, the suave and sophisticated leader of a satanic coven, chillingly portrayed by the brilliant Charles Gray. Mokata has recently enlisted a new member to his coven in the shape of Simon Aaron. Puzzled by Aaron's recent strange behavior, he and his friend Rex Van Ryn visit Aaron's home to find him hosting a gathering. They soon deduce that Aaron is entangled in devil worship, and they do what is necessary to bring him to his senses. Aaron is moved to a safe house belonging to a close relative, but Mokata is in no mood to give up his prize. And there begins a struggle between he and de Richelieu for Aaron's soul, and that of another new member of Mokata's circle, Tanith. Under the influence of Mokata's mind control, Tanith escapes the protective care of Rex Van Ryn. She's lured to his location in the nearby woods, where the gathering coven are expecting a very important visitor. Rex follows her to that location and manages to alert de Richelieu, who soon arrives to survey the coven's diabolical activities. They both watch in growing horror and disgust as the ceremony continues and a sacrifice is offered for slaughter. The coven members dance and drink of the sacrificial blood, and the gathering steadily turns into a drunken orgy. And now Mokata welcomes his special guest to the twisted celebrations.
The goat of Mendes. The devil himself.
Mokata's persistence in trying to win back Aaron and Tanith to his fold builds to an intense climax. Ultimately, de Richelieu is forced to shield himself and his friends within a protective circle as a defense against multiple psychic attacks. But Mokata has even bigger tricks up his sleeve, and he conjures another fearsome opponent in the form of the Angel of Death himself.
He once breaks into the circle. If we once catch sight of his face.
And once summoned, this angel can't return without taking a human soul with him. The Devil Rides Out is fast-paced fun for all fans of satanic and occult horror, and it's one of Christopher Lee's personal favorites from his catalogue of leading roles. Welcome to a satanic horror with plenty of pulse-raising moments and startling imagery made by a filmmaker who was best known for his musicals. This is Angel Heart, the tale of a mysterious disappearance, repressed memory, and voodoo. The film begins in the New York City of the 1950s, where an investigator by the name of Harry Angel is invited by a mysterious figure to investigate the disappearance of a professional singer called Johnny Favorite. That mysterious figure is Louis Cypher, and he is played by none other than Robert De Niro.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Angel.
Cypher asks Mickey Rourke's Angel to find Favorite, but his reasons for doing so are necessarily vague and unspecified.
Does this man owe you money or something?
Not quite. I gave Johnny some help at the beginning of his career.
So were you his, his agent?
No.
Monsieur Cypher has a contract. Certain collateral was involved to be forfeited in the event of his death.
Angel is left unsure of Cypher's intentions if he should find Favorite, but he can't resist the temptation of the lucrative deal for the job, and he signs on the dotted line. Harry Angel's search for Johnny Favorite leads him to New Orleans in the cloying heat of summer.
We don't go around murdering people, all right, Mr. Angel? What about your Johnny favorite?
Oh, so now, you remember him after all, huh?
Parker's intention was to use this location symbolically as a kind of hell, getting hotter and hotter right up to the climax. The investigation involves the questioning of many interesting and diverse characters as Angel tries to unravel the mystery surrounding Favorite's disappearance, all of which is set to the unnerving backdrop of voodoo and Hollywood's notion of its rites, practices, and charms. Angel Heart performed poorly at the box office, but it certainly worked its dark magic on me. It chilled me to the bone several times, both directly and subconsciously. I recommend it to anyone who's interested in horror with a spiritual dimension. Horror films were badly disrespected before The Exorcist, but that's only fair, because horrors of that film's depth and quality were very rare gems scattered across the decades before it, and even then they rarely troubled the awards ceremonies of their day. But things were about to change, and it was all down to a writer who was best known for his comedy films, such as The Pink Panther's A Shot in the Dark. That writer was William Peter Blatty, who would also pen the screenplay based on his best-selling novel and produce the film adaptation. After a grueling and disaster-prone shooting schedule, The Exorcist was released on 26th of December 1973 to an expectant America that had devoured the novel and kept it on the New York Times bestseller list for 57 weeks. It would soon become clear, though, that The Exorcist would be more than just another movie release. It would become a global news event.
I went to check it out. The manager of the National Theater in Westwood says that there indeed are at least a dozen people who faint or become ill during every showing. But The Exorcist is still drawing sellout houses for every performance, complete with lines around the block.
Audience members would suffer all kinds of extreme reactions to the film: seizures, vomiting, fainting, or just being so damn scared that they had to stop watching the film and escape to the lobby.
This is the second time we've seen it. We still can't hack it. No. Why was that? I'm not going back in there.
I was only 8 years old back then, and far more interested in toys and comics than the commotion caused by a film I wasn't even old enough to see. But The Exorcist and I were destined to meet in the next decade, courtesy of the home video boom that would bewitch my home country of Britain more than any other. This newfound freedom would worry politicians and the media more and more as the decade progressed, and the knives were soon out for what the media campaigner Mary Whitehouse and then the tabloids would label video nasties.
You have been warned is the message to video retailers from the Director of Public Prosecutions. If you stock any of the 62 titles on a list circulated by Scotland Yard, you could end up in court.
Indirectly linked to that list of schlock horrors, though not officially a part of it, The Exorcist would become a victim of incoming laws that were designed to control the sale and rental of horror videos in particular, and Warner Studios voluntarily removed the film from the UK's booming video market. But I'd already seen the film a few years before, at the age of 16 in 1981, and I spent the next few weeks wishing that I hadn't. In truth, there was little to trouble me in the film's first hour, though the graphic desecration of the Virgin Mary statue was a worrying shot across my bow. Most of that first half focused on the development of the characters, detailing their everyday lives and concerns, while cleverly accelerating the decline of Regan into her possessed state. I didn't realize at the time that this purposeful development was making the characters more real to me and would make the horror all the more real when it finally came. And come it did, in the form of the crucifix masturbation scene. The graphic actions and explicit language in that scene broke me, just as it has broken so many others over the years. It's the pivotal moment when you ask, does it get any worse than this? What I wanted was to get up and walk away, just like the cinema goers back in 1973.
The other night, this guy came out and I looked out the door and he was lying on the floor.
He's really big. You wouldn't expect it.
I know. All these big guys, they come out and they look like they're ghosts or something.
Petrified that things would get even worse after the crucifix scene, my relief was palpable when the exorcist himself, Lancaster Merrin, finally showed up at the possessed girl's house. At last, we had some capable help. We had an experienced priest who knew what had to be done and how to do it. To me, he was the hero sheriff riding into town to put the bad guy in his place. It wasn't only what I was seeing in The Exorcist that was disturbing me, though. It was the frequent, sudden, loud noises. Whether I liked it or not, and I didn't, that climactic exorcism scene was coming, so I braced myself for impact. The chaos in that ice-cold bedroom echoed my own shattered inner state.
Amen.
The room was shaking, splitting, and cracking, just like me deep down inside. I remember days later being home alone and placing a chair against the bedroom door, lest that door should slowly creak open and that demon girl would be standing there. The film haunted me that way for weeks, and it would be months before I was properly free from the dark shadow of The Exorcist. I sometimes ask myself, if I'd been watching the film alone, would I have stopped watching it after the crucifix scene? The answer is always yes, and I don't believe that I would have watched the film again on my own. William Peter Blatty himself was the recipient of the film's second Oscar for his excellent screenplay, and I'll leave the final words on The Exorcist to him.
The film delivers to this very day that very precious commodity, a powerful emotional response. You know, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter.
With only 2 contenders left for the #1 spot, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe for more Top 5 videos in the future. Welcome to The Omen, a brilliant 1970s satanic horror that rode on the coattails of The Exorcist. And for some reason it's often compared unfavorably to that film, which I feel is unfair, because it's certainly no copycat. It is, in fact, Hollywood's first attempt at bringing the Bible's Book of Revelation to the big screen.
Your son, Mr. Thorne, the son of the devil.
That's enough.
And with your wealth and power, he will establish his counterfeit kingdom here on earth, receiving his power directly from Satan.
The screenplay wastes no time setting up its satanic scenario with little introduction to its 2 main characters. High-flying US ambassador to Italy, Robert Thorne, is distraught after being told that his wife gave birth to his stillborn child, and he's faced with the grim prospect of giving her that news when she recovers from her unconscious state. The hospital chaplain suggests that he could swap his child for another, a boy whose mother died in childbirth in the same hospital that very night. Against his better judgment, Thorne accepts the opportunity, and unbeknown to he and his wife, they've just adopted the Antichrist as their own child. Casting is just the start of a long list of strengths in this film. Seasoned actor Gregory Peck was first choice as Robert Thorne, and he was eager for the part. Fortunately, Peck was given the part he craved, and he would head a stellar cast.
I had Billy Whitelaw, I had David Warner, I had Lee Remick.
The Antichrist himself would be far more difficult to cast, though, and would involve auditioning over 500 boys for the dubious honor of playing that role.
Harvey came in, little Harvey.
And Dick says, when I yell action, you attack me, and don't stop till I yell cut. Dick yells action, the guy hits him right in the balls. He hits him right in the, tiger, hit him right in the nuts. Boom, 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 boom.
He was a good kid. I would not have wanted him to be my own.
The scariest scene for me was the dog attack in the graveyard. And it's a scene where the stuntman playing David Warner would be badly injured, despite wearing metal and leather armor under his clothes.
The one dog cut right through the armor, cut through the leather, and had 14 stitches.
They weren't angry. They were trying to hump each other. I mean, there's shots in there. If you really look closely, there's a couple of dogs up on top with glazed eyes, but we just put sounds in of dogs barking.
But the scariest scene for the cast was the baboon scene at Windsor Safari Park, especially for Lee Remick.
Keep all car windows closed. Baboons are dangerous.
Donner had tried every trick in the book to get the baboons to attack the car that Remick was driving, to no avail. After being advised that the alpha male of the troop was to undergo a minor operation, they thought it a good idea to place the still unconscious baboon in the car with Remick and make him visible to his surrounding troop. What they didn't count on was the baboon in the car waking up.
The baboons are really coming at the car. And Lee goes to scream. I said, no, Lee, not yet. Not. She said, not yet. And I look down, and the baboon is coming too. And he's got a hold of her hair, and he's pulling her back. And these baboons are stronger than 10 of us. Lee was totally, we had to change her wardrobe 3 times. The kid was horrified. Total state of panic. If you notice that scene, there's a lot of shaking that camera, that's me, because I was scared stiff.
And what of the famous omen curse that haunted its production?
Our special effects man, he had a beautiful girlfriend. He was driving and had a head-on accident, and beheaded this girl. And John is the one that he invented the beheading of our picture. And so his girl was beheaded, and then he woke up and he saw Liège, 6.6 kilometers. That was frightening.
The Omen needs no comparison with any other film. It stands in its own right as a brilliant attempt at bringing one of the biggest stories of Western culture to the big screen. And now we come to the satanic horror that most of my subscribers voted their personal favorite. Fancy a classic tale laced with lusty satanic witchery, spectacular beheadings and devilish black humor? Well, of course you do. So come on in. We're talking Tim Burton's 1999 horror outing Sleepy Hollow, based loosely on a Washington Irving short story in which the marauding specter of a headless horseman stalks a quiet American village.
I've always wanted to do a fairy tale, and this is like one of our few American fairy tales.
The Western Woods is a haunted place where brave men will not venture.
An American classic it may be, but the roots of this particular legend lay firmly in Middle Ages Europe, with tales of headless horsemen in Ireland, Britain and Germany. The film's production would also head to Europe after failing to find a suitably spooky location in the US.
Action!
But England couldn't deliver Burton's nightmare village either, so they created one. The village was built in incredible detail over a period of 3 months and included a covered bridge and a church. The addition of animals and people turned this Sleepy Hollow into a living, breathing thing, complete with fairy tale touches that offered the director the sense of ominous foreboding that he sought for the film. Considering Tim Burton's lifelong love of Hammer horror, it's perhaps surprising that Sleepy Hollow was his first stab at directing a horror movie, preferring comic book and fantasy outings until then. Even so, he couldn't help but try to tone down the horror in Andrew Kevin Walker's original screenplay by asking Tom Stoppard to infuse it with humor. In this adaptation of the famous tale, Ichabod Crane is a New York police constable sent to the upstate hamlet of Sleepy Hollow. His task is to investigate a series of macabre murders said to be the work of the legendary Headless Horseman. During the investigation, this feverishly pious constable encounters a potential lover,
Katrina,
witchcraft and Satanism, and even the Headless Horseman himself. One of Sleepy Hollow's many assets is its amazing cast, which includes Christina Ricci, Michael Gambon, and two of my all-time favorites in the shape of Miranda Richardson and the ever-watchable Christopher Walken. Johnny Depp was always Tim Burton's first choice to play Ichabod Crane, but he also considered Daniel Day-Lewis, Liam Neeson and Brad Pitt. But Depp was disappointed that neither the studio nor Burton would allow him to portray Crane as he was described in Washington Irving's original short story.
Sort of that sort of snipe nose of Ichabod Crane, you know, the legendary Ichabod Crane, and the big ears and the, you know, long hands and arms and stuff.
That would have been interesting to see, but Burton preferred Depp to express that through his performance rather than spend hours in makeup every day. The film may well have been made at a time when CGI was dominant, but the real star of Sleepy Hollow's special effects catalogue was purely practical, and for a story with so many beheadings, it was essential that those disembodied heads were frighteningly lifelike.
Talk about intimations of mortality, you know. I've seen my head in somebody's hand.
But just having those heads roll wasn't enough for our ghoulish director. He wanted them to spin too. And here's where I put my own spin on this video, by exploring some of the differences between this classic film and the story that inspired it. The first major difference is that the Ichabod Crane of the story is a school teacher, not a police constable, and nor is he skeptical about the existence of the Headless Horseman, being a believer in both ghosts and monsters.
To detect the guilty, we must use our brains to recognize vital clues, using up-to-date scientific techniques.
The film is set in the year 1799, and the idea of Crane using forensic science in his investigation may seem a little far-fetched. But the first recorded use of forensics in law occurred 15 years before that, in 1784, when it helped to convict a man by the name of John Toms.
We need to operate immediately.
Operate? She's dead.
Conducting an autopsy also seems out of time in the film, but the first recorded use of that aspect of criminal investigation dates all the way back to 44 BC, when the body of Julius Caesar himself went under the knife to establish which of his 23 stab wounds led to his death. And what of that amazing tree, which represents the brooding and twisted satanic influence that Sleepy Hollow is under?
The tree of the dead.
In the story, there is a description of a tree near to the school where Crane teaches, but it in no sense describes the tree of the film. Sadly, the tree isn't real and can't be visited, because it's purely the creation of Sleepy Hollow's talented production team. It was created as the centerpiece of the Western Woods, in one of the biggest sound stages on the planet.
Cut.
Sleepy Hollow was the convincing winner of this poll with a massive 44% of the vote, leaving both The Omen and The Exorcist far behind. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. There are plenty more top 5s to come from my DVD collection, which includes thrillers, comedies, action, science fiction, drama, adventure, and horror.